The glint of gold caught my eye as I reached for the crumpled receipt in Jack's jacket pocket. My heart raced as I smoothed out the paper, revealing a jaw-dropping sum for a piece of jewelry I'd never seen. Confusion turned to dread as I realized this wasn't a surprise gift for me. "Jack?" I called out, my voice wavering. "Can you come here for a minute?" My husband of 10 years sauntered into our bedroom, his easy smile fading as he saw the receipt in my trembling hand. "Laura, what are you doing going through my things?" I held up the damning evidence. "What's this? Because I know it's not for me." Jack's face hardened, and in that moment, I knew. The air left my lungs as if I'd been punched. He didn't even try to lie. "It's for Molly," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "I'm sorry you found out this way, but maybe it's for the best." "Molly?" I repeated, the name tasting bitter on my tongue. "Who the hell is Molly?" Jack sighed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "She's someone I've been seeing. For a while now." The world tilted on its axis. I gripped the edge of the dresser to steady myself. "How long is a while, Jack?" 6 months, he admitted, not meeting my eyes. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of betrayal. I thought of all the late nights at the office, the sudden business trips. How could I have been so blind? Why? I choked out, tears threatening to spill over. Jack's gaze snapped to mine, a flash of anger in his eyes. "You really want to know why, Laura? Because Molly can give me what you can't." The words hit me like a slap. We'd been trying for a baby for years, with no success. Each negative test had been a knife to my heart, but I'd always believed we were in it together. How wrong I'd been. "That's not fair," I whispered, my voice breaking. "We've been through this together. We talked about adoption, about—" "It's not the same," Jack interrupted, his composure cracking. "I want my own child, Laura. A legacy, and Molly. She understands that." I felt sick. "So what? You're just going to throw away 10 years of marriage for some younger model who might be able to pop out a kid?" Jack's silence was answer enough. I sank onto the bed, my legs no longer able to support me. "Does your mother know?" A flicker of guilt crossed his face. "Helen, she's met Molly. She likes her." Of course she did. My mother-in-law had never approved of me, always hinting that Jack could do better. I guess she'd finally gotten her wish. "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Laura, get out!" I stood, finding strength in my anger. "I can't even look at you right now. Just go." Jack hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He grabbed his keys and wallet from the nightstand. At the doorway, he paused. "I am sorry, Laura. I never meant to hurt you." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Well, you did a piss-poor job of that, didn't you?" The front door slammed, and I was alone. The silence of the house pressed in on me, suffocating. I looked around the room we'd shared for so long, seeing it with new eyes. How many lies had been told here? How many nights had he lain beside me thinking of her? My gaze fell on our wedding photo on the dresser. With a cry of rage, I swept it to the floor, glass shattering. As I stared at the broken frame, a realization hit me. My life, the future I'd planned, lay in pieces at my feet, but as the initial shock began to fade, another emotion took its place. Determination. I might be down, but I was far from out. Jack and his precious Molly had no idea what was coming. I reached for my phone, fingers shaking as I dialed a number. "Dad? It's me. I need your help." I stared at the business card in my hand, my stomach churning. Discreet Investigations was embossed in gold lettering, a stark contrast to the turmoil in my heart. My father's words echoed in my head. "Laura, honey, you need to know the whole truth." With trembling fingers, I dialed the number. A gruff voice answered. "Malone speaking." "Mr. Malone, this is Laura Jennings. I need your help." We arranged to meet at a cafe the next day. As I hung up, a wave of nausea hit me. Was I really going to spy on my own husband? The cafe was bustling when I arrived, but I spotted Malone immediately. He looked exactly like a private investigator should. Weathered face, sharp eyes, and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Mrs. Jennings," he nodded as I sat down. "Tell me what you need." I took a deep breath. "I need evidence of my husband's affair. Concrete proof." Malone's expression didn't change. "Consider it done. I'll need some information." For the next hour, I laid bare the intimate details of my life. Jack's schedule, his habits, even the make and model of his car. With each revelation, I felt a piece of my heart crumble. "I'll be in touch within a week," Malone said as we parted. "Try to act normal in the meantime." Normal. What a joke. but I managed to go through the motions, even as Jack's lies became more apparent. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, how had I been so blind? 5 agonizing days later, my phone buzzed with a text from Malone. Evidence collected. Meeting tomorrow? Same place. That night, as Jack mumbled another excuse about working late, I felt a surge of anger. Don't bother coming home, I snapped. I'm sure Molly would love to have you. Jack froze, his face paling. Laura, I held up a hand. Save it, I know everything. The next morning, I met Malone with a mix of dread and determination. He slid a manila envelope across the table. It's all there, he said gruffly. Photos, video, even some audio recordings. You sure you want to see this? I nodded, my throat tight. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope and began to sift through its contents. The first photo hit me like a punch to the gut. Jack and a younger woman, Molly, I presumed, locked in an embrace outside a restaurant. Their intimacy was undeniable. More photos followed, stolen kisses in a park, holding hands as they entered a jewelry store. My eyes blurred with tears as I recognized the necklace Molly wore, the one from the receipt that had started this whole nightmare. But it was the audio recording that truly broke me. Jack's voice, low and intimate, filled my ears. I love you, Molly. I've never felt this way before. Laura, she just doesn't understand me like you do. A sob escaped me, drawing concerned looks from nearby patrons. Malone discreetly pushed a box of tissues towards me. There's more, he said quietly, but I think you've seen enough. I nodded, unable to speak. As I gathered the damning evidence, a strange calm settled over me. The pain was still there, raw and bleeding, but alongside it was a steely resolve. Thank you, Mr. Malone, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You've given me exactly what I needed. As I left the cafe, clutching the envelope to my chest, I knew my next move. It was time to confront Jack, to force him to face the consequences of his actions. No more lies, no more excuses. My phone buzzed. A text from Jack. We need to talk. I'm coming home early. Perfect timing. I typed a quick reply. Yes, we do. I'll be waiting. The stage was set for a showdown. As I drove home, my mind raced with all the things I wanted to say, all the pain I wanted to inflict. But one thought rose above the rest. Whatever happened next, I would face it on my terms. Jack had underestimated me, but he was about to learn just how strong I could be. The front door clicked open, and I steeled myself for the confrontation. Jack walked in, his face a mask of practiced contrition. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. Laura, we need to talk, he began, but I cut him off. You're right, we do. I slapped the manila envelope on the coffee table. Why don't you start by explaining these? Jack's eyes widened as he leafed through the photos. His face cycled through shock, anger, and finally settled on a cold resignation. So, you hired a private investigator. I had to know the truth, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, though I guess I should thank you for making it so easy to catch you. He sank into the armchair, running a hand through his hair. Laura, I never meant for it to go this far. Molly, Save it, I snapped. I don't want to hear about your precious Molly. What I want to know is why. Why throw away 10 years of marriage? Jack's eyes met mine, and I was shocked by the anger I saw there. You really want to know why? Because I want a family, Laura, a real family with children, and you can't give me that. His words hit me like a physical blow. We talked about adoption, about other options. It's not the same, Jack shouted, standing up. I want my own flesh and blood, a legacy. Molly understands that. She wants the same things I do. I felt my own anger rising to match his. So that's it? I'm just a defective baby-making machine to you? That's not fair, Jack said, but his eyes betrayed him. You know what's not fair? I spat. Throwing away a decade of love and commitment because your wife can't get pregnant. That's not fair, Jack. He had the decency to look ashamed, but only for a moment. I'm sorry, Laura, but I've made my decision. I want a divorce. The word hung in the air between us, heavy and final. I'd known it was coming, but hearing it still felt like a knife to the heart. Fine, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. If that's what you want. Jack nodded, then reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. I've already spoken to a lawyer. These are the initial divorce papers. I think you'll find the terms fair. I stared at the envelope, not reaching for it. How long have you been planning this? He hesitated. A few months. I wanted to make sure everything was in order before you ripped my life apart. I finished for him. Jack sighed. Laura, please. This doesn't have to be ugly. My mother, Helen, she's offered to mediate. Helen, I laughed bitterly. Let me guess, she's thrilled about all this. His silence was answer enough. Of course Helen would be overjoyed. She'd never approved of me, always hinting that Jack could do better. Now she had the daughter-in-law she'd always wanted. She likes Molly, Jack said quietly. They've become quite close. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed the nearest object, a framed photo of our wedding day, and hurled it at the wall. It shattered spectacularly, glass raining down on the carpet. Get out, I hissed. Get out of my house and take your damn papers with you. Jack looked startled by my outburst. Laura, be reasonable. Reasonable? I advanced on him, fury giving me strength. You want reasonable? How's this for reasonable? I'll see you in court, Jack, and I promise you I will fight you for every last penny. He backed away, hands raised in surrender. You don't want to do this, Laura. Think about... I said get out. I screamed, my voice raw with pain and rage. Jack hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He placed the divorce papers on the table and walked to the door. With his hand on the knob, he turned back. I am sorry, Laura. For what it's worth, I did love you. As the door closed behind him, I collapsed to the floor, sobs racking my body. The life I'd known was over, shattered like the wedding photo on the floor. But as I cried, a small, determined voice in the back of my mind whispered, This isn't the end. It's just the beginning of my fight. The sound of a car door slamming jolted me awake. I blinked, disoriented, realizing I'd fallen asleep on the couch. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the mess from last night's confrontation. The shattered wedding photo lay accusingly on the floor. I stumbled to the window, my heart sinking as I watched Jack loading boxes into his car. This was really happening. He was leaving? Before I could think better of it, I yanked open the front door. So that's it? You're just going to sneak away while I'm sleeping? Jack froze, a box in his arms. I didn't want to make this any harder than it needs to be, Laura. Oh, how considerate of you, I spat, the words dripping with sarcasm. He sighed, setting the box down. Look, I've left the divorce papers on the kitchen table. My lawyer will be in touch about... Your lawyer, I interrupted. What happened to Helen mediating? A flicker of guilt crossed Jack's face. Mom thought it would be better to keep things professional. I laughed bitterly. Of course she did. Wouldn't want to risk me poisoning her precious son against her new favorite daughter-in-law. Laura, please, Jack said, his voice strained. Can we not do this? Do what, Jack? Acknowledge the fact that you're abandoning our marriage for a younger model who can give you the babies I couldn't? His face hardened. That's not fair. You know it's more complicated than that. Is it? I challenged. Because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty simple. You found someone who could give you what you wanted, so you're throwing away 10 years like they meant nothing. Jack ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. I never meant to hurt you, Laura, but we want different things. It's better this way. Better for who? I demanded, tears stinging my eyes. For you? For Molly? For your mother? Because it sure as hell isn't better for me. He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I'm sorry. I truly am, but this is how it has to be. As Jack turned back to his car, something inside me snapped. I stormed back into the house, grabbing the first thing I could find, a vase he'd given me for our 5th anniversary. Without thinking, I hurled it at his retreating back. It missed, shattering on the driveway instead. Jack whirled around, shock written across his face. Jesus, Laura! What the hell? Get out! I screamed, my voice raw with pain and fury. Get out, and don't you dare come back! Neighbors were starting to peek out their windows, drawn by the commotion. I didn't care. Let them see. Let them all see what Jack had reduced me to. He raised his hands in surrender, backing towards his car. I'm going. Just take care of yourself, Laura. I watched, trembling with rage and grief, as Jack got into his car and drove away. The finality of it hit me like a physical blow. He was gone. Really, truly gone. Stumbling back inside, I collapsed onto the couch, sobs racking my body. How had my life fallen apart so completely? Just days ago, I thought I had it all, a loving husband, a successful career, a beautiful home. Now, it was all ashes. As the tears subsided, leaving me feeling hollow and drained, my gaze fell on the divorce papers on the kitchen table. They seemed to mock me, a stark reminder of my new reality. With shaking hands, I reached for them. I had to face this head-on. No more crying, no more throwing things. It was time to be strong, to fight for myself. I picked up my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number I needed. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Dad?" I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need your help. Do you know any good divorce lawyers?" As I listened to my father's concerned response, a steely resolve settled over me. Jack thought he could just walk away, that I'd roll over and accept whatever scraps he deigned to throw my way. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of my fight. The waiting room of Dr. Patel's office felt suffocating. I'd been here countless times before, each visit a reminder of my failure to conceive. Now, 2 weeks after Jack's departure, I sat here again, but for an entirely different reason. "Laura Jennings?" the nurse called, her voice jarring me from my thoughts. I followed her to the examination room, my stomach churning with more than just nausea. Dr. Patel entered moments later, her kind face creased with concern. "Laura, how are you feeling?" she asked, glancing at my chart. "Terrible," I admitted. "I've been sick for days. I thought it was stress from everything, but it's not getting better." Dr. Patel nodded sympathetically. "I see. Well, let's run some tests and see what's going on." As she drew blood and ordered other tests, my mind raced. Could it be? No, it was impossible. After years of trying, of heartbreak and disappointment, there was no way. An hour later, Dr. Patel returned, her expression unreadable. "Laura, I have your results." I braced myself, expecting the worst. "What is it? Is something wrong?" She took a deep breath. "Laura, you're pregnant." The world tilted on its axis. What? Pregnant?" Dr. Patel repeated, a smile breaking across her face. "About 6 weeks along." 6 weeks. My mind reeled, doing the math. It must have happened right before Jack left, during one of our last attempts to salvage our marriage. "But how?" I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. "We tried for so long." Dr. Patel squeezed my hand. "Sometimes, Laura, these things happen when we least expect them. Your body was under less stress, perhaps." Her voice faded into background noise as the reality sank in. I was pregnant, with Jack's child, the child he'd left me for not being able to provide. "Laura?" Dr. Patel's voice cut through my thoughts. "Are you all right?" I nodded, unable to speak. She continued, outlining next steps, scheduling follow-up appointments, but my mind was elsewhere, grappling with the enormity of this revelation. As I left the clinic, my phone buzzed. A text from Jack. "Lawyer wants to meet next week to finalize divorce terms. Let me know if that works for you." A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat. Oh, how the tables had turned. I typed back a quick "fine" before calling the one person I knew I could trust. "Mom," I said when she answered, "I need you and Dad to come over. Now." An hour later, I sat across from my parents in my living room, clutching a mug of tea like a lifeline. "Sweetheart," my mother said gently, "what's going on? You're scaring us." I took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was deafening. Then my father's voice, gruff with emotion. "Does Jack know?" I shook my head. "No one knows except you two. I just found out today." "Oh, Laura," my mother breathed, moving to sit beside me. "What are you going to do?" That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? Tell Jack and risk him coming back out of obligation? Keep it a secret and raise this child alone? The possibilities swirled in my mind, each more daunting than the last. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice breaking. I don't know." My father leaned forward, his eyes fierce with protective love. "Whatever you decide, we're here for you, all the way." As my parents enveloped me in a hug, I felt a surge of strength. This child, this miracle I'd longed for, was now my responsibility, my chance at the family I'd always wanted. In that moment, I made my decision. I would keep this baby, with or without Jack. I would fight for my child, for our future, with everything I had. "I'm keeping the baby," I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks, "and I'm going to need a better lawyer." My parents exchanged a look of determination. "We'll call cousin Sarah." My father said, "She's the best family lawyer in the state." As they started making plans, I placed a hand on my still flat stomach. To this tiny life inside me, I made a silent promise. I will protect you, love you, and give you the best life possible, no matter what. The road ahead would be hard, but I was ready. This was the dawn of my new life, and I intended to face it head-on. The conference room felt like a battlefield. On one side sat Jack and his lawyer, their faces impassive. On the other, I sat with Sarah, my cousin and now fierce legal advocate. My hand rested protectively over my slightly swollen belly, hidden beneath a loose blouse. "Let's begin," Sarah said, her voice crisp. "We're here to finalize the divorce terms." Jack's lawyer nodded, sliding a document across the table. "We believe these terms are more than fair, considering the circumstances." I scanned the paper, my blood boiling. Jack was offering a pittance in alimony, claiming most of our shared assets, and even trying to keep the house we'd bought together. "This is ridiculous," I spat. "You're trying to leave me with nothing." Jack finally met my eyes. "Laura, be reasonable. You know I was the primary breadwinner." "Reasonable?" I laughed bitterly. "Like you were reasonable when you threw away our marriage for a younger woman?" His lawyer intervened. "Let's keep emotions out of this. The facts are clear." "The facts?" I interrupted. "Here's a fact for you. I'm pregnant." The room fell silent. Jack's face drained of color. "What? That's impossible. We tried for years." "Well, it happened," I said, my voice steady. "Right before you left, so your fair terms, they need some serious adjustment." Jack's lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently. I could see the panic in Jack's eyes. "This changed everything. We'll need to reassess," his lawyer said finally, "in light of this development." Sarah nodded, a predatory gleam in her eye. "We thought you might. Now let's talk about real fairness." The next hour was a blur of negotiations. Child support, custody arrangements, division of assets. Everything was on the table. Jack seemed shell-shocked, barely participating, as his lawyer fought for every inch. Finally, we reached an agreement. I would keep the house, receive substantial alimony and child support, and have primary custody. Jack would have visitation rights, but limited ones. As we prepared to sign, Jack spoke up. "Wait, I want to be part of this child's life. I want joint custody." I felt a surge of rage. "Now you want to be a father, after leaving me because I couldn't give you children?" "That was different," he protested. "I didn't know." "Exactly," I cut him off. "You didn't know, and you didn't care. You walked away. You don't get to waltz back in now that it's convenient." Jack's face hardened. "I have rights. This is my child, too." "Your rights," I laughed humorlessly. "What about my rights when you were sleeping with Molly? When you let your mother treat me like dirt?" Where the mention of Helen seemed to deflate Jack. "Laura, please, we can work this out." I shook my head. "No, Jack, we can't. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it." I turned to Sarah. "Add a clause. Neither Jack nor Helen can contact the child without my express permission." Jack's lawyer started to protest, but Sarah was already drafting the addition. "It's within her rights," she said firmly, "given the circumstances of the separation." As Jack signed the papers, his hand shaking slightly, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was done. I was free. Outside the office, Jack caught up to me. "Laura, wait. Can't we talk about this?" I turned to face him, one hand on my belly. "There's nothing left to say, Jack? You wanted a family? Well, congratulations. You're going to be a father, but you lost the right to be a husband and partner when you walked out that door." His face crumpled. "I made a mistake. I see that now. Please give me another chance." For a moment, I wavered. Then I remembered the pain, the betrayal, the night spent crying myself to sleep. "No," I said firmly. "This is my chance now. My chance at the family I always wanted, without you." As I walked away, leaving Jack standing alone on the sidewalk, I felt a mix of triumph and sadness. This wasn't how I'd imagined starting a family, but it was my reality now, and I was determined to make the best of it. I placed a protective hand on my stomach. "It's just you and me now, little one," I whispered, "and we're going to be just fine." The shrill cry of my son Ethan pierced through the peaceful Saturday morning. I rushed to his room, my heart racing. As I scooped him into my arms, a commotion outside caught my attention. Through the window, I saw a familiar car pulling into my driveway. My blood ran cold. "Helen." "Shh, it's okay, baby," I murmured to Ethan, even as panic rose in my throat. What was she doing here? The doorbell rang, followed by insistent knocking. "Laura, I know you're in there. Open up." I clutched Ethan tighter, my mind racing. 2 years of peace, of building a life for just the two of us. And now this. "Laura," Helen's voice grew more shrill. "I have a right to see my grandson." "No, you don't," I whispered, but my voice shook. The divorce agreement was clear. Neither Jack nor Helen could contact us without my permission. The knocking turned to pounding. "If you don't open this door, I'm calling the police." A hysterical laugh bubbled up inside me. "Go ahead," I called out, finding my voice. "I'm sure they'd love to hear how you're violating a court order." There was a moment of silence, then Helen's voice, dripping with venom. "You can't keep him from us forever, Laura. He's Jack's son, too." I felt a surge of protective rage. He stopped being Jack's son the moment he walked out on us. "You bitch!" Helen screamed. I heard a crash. She must have thrown something at the door. Ethan began to wail again, frightened by the noise. I bounced him gently, trying to calm him even as my own heart raced. "It's okay, sweetie," I soothed. "Grandma's just leaving." But Helen wasn't leaving. I could hear her on the phone, her voice rising in pitch. "Yes, officer? I'm trying to see my grandson, and his mother is refusing to let me in. It's 1852 Maple Street. Please hurry." My hands shook as I reached for my own phone. I dialed Sarah's number, praying she'd pick up on a Saturday. "Laura?" Sarah answered, sounding concerned. "What's wrong?" "Helen's here," I said, my voice trembling. "She's demanding to see Ethan. She's called the police." "Stay calm," Sarah said, her lawyer voice kicking in. "Don't open the door. I'm on my way. If the police arrive before me, show them the court order. It's in the blue folder in your study, remember?" I nodded, then realized she couldn't see me. "Okay, thank you, Sarah." As I hung up, I heard sirens in the distance. This was really happening. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. I carried Ethan downstairs, retrieving the blue folder from my study. Through the window, I could see a police car pulling up. Helen was gesticulating wildly, pointing at the house. The officer approached my door, knocking firmly. "Ma'am? This is Officer Rodriguez. Can you please open the door?" With shaking hands, I unlocked the door, Ethan on my hip and the folder clutched to my chest. "Officer," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I have a court order here prohibiting this woman from contacting me or my son without my express permission." I handed him the document. As he read it, Helen pushed forward, her face contorted with rage. "That's my grandson," she shrieked. "You can't keep him from me." The officer held up a hand, silencing her. "Ma'am, this order is clear. You're in violation by being here." Helen's face crumpled. But he's family. Laura, please, just let me see him." For a moment, I wavered. Then I remembered the pain, the betrayal, the nights spent crying while pregnant and alone. "No," I said firmly. "You lost that right when you supported Jack abandoning us. Officer, I want to press charges for harassment." Helen's wail of anguish was cut off by Sarah's arrival. As my cousin-turned-lawyer took charge of the situation, I retreated inside with Ethan, my legs finally giving out as I sank onto the couch. I hugged my son close, tears streaming down my face. We'd weathered this storm, but at what cost? And how many more battles lay ahead? As I heard Helen being led away, still protesting, I made a silent vow. No matter what it took, I would protect Ethan. From Helen, from Jack, from anyone who threatened our peace. We'd come too far to let anyone tear us apart now. The cafe bustled with the morning rush, but I barely noticed as I stared at the text message on my phone. It was from Sarah, my lawyer and cousin. "Jack's filing for increased visitation. Hearing set for next month. Call me ASAP." My hands shook as I set the phone down. After 3 years of relative peace, Jack was making a move. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. "Mommy, can I have more juice?" Ethan's voice cut through my panic. I looked at my son, his face smeared with syrup from his pancakes, and felt a surge of protective love. "Of course, sweetie," I said, forcing a smile. As I poured his juice, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Laura?" A woman's voice, hesitant and familiar. It's Molly." I nearly dropped the phone. "Molly? What do you want?" There was a pause, then a shaky breath. "I thought you should know. Jack and I, we're getting divorced." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "What? Why?" "We've been trying to have a baby," Molly said, her voice thick with tears. "But I can't conceive. Jack couldn't handle it. He left last week." A hysterical laugh bubbled up inside me. The irony was almost too much to bear. "Laura?" Molly's voice was small. "I'm so sorry. For everything. I never should have." "Save it," I cut her off. "You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. Just like I did." I hung up, my mind reeling. Jack leaving Molly for the same reason he'd left me. It felt like cosmic justice, but it brought me no joy. As I looked at Ethan, happily munching on his breakfast, a realization hit me. This was my chance. With Jack's life in shambles, I could push for full custody. No more visitation battles, no more fear of Helen's interference. I dialed Sarah's number. I just heard from Molly. Jack left her. I want to file for full custody. Sarah's sharp intake of breath was audible. Laura, are you sure? This could get ugly. I'm sure, I said, my voice steady. It's time to end this, once and for all. The next month was a whirlwind of legal preparations and sleepless nights. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. As I walked into the courtroom, I saw Jack for the first time in years. He looked haggard, defeated. For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. Then I remembered everything he'd put me through, and my resolve hardened. The judge looked between us, her expression stern. Mr. Jennings, you're seeking increased visitation. Mrs. Jennings, you're countering with a request for full custody. Let's hear your arguments. Jack's lawyer went first, painting a picture of a reformed man who'd made mistakes but deserved a second chance. When it was our turn, Sarah laid out our case methodically. Jack's abandonment, his pattern of leaving when things got tough, the stability I'd provided for Ethan. As the judge deliberated, Jack approached me. Laura, please, he whispered, don't take my son away from me. I've lost everything else. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years. I saw the man I'd once loved, the father of my child. But I also saw the man who'd broken my heart, who'd walked away when things got hard. You lost him the day you walked out on us, I said, my voice low but firm. I'm just making it official. The judge's decision was swift and final. Full custody granted to me, with Jack allowed supervised visitation twice a month. As she read out the terms, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. We were free. Outside the courtroom, I hugged Sarah tightly. Thank you, I whispered, for everything. She squeezed me back. You did this, Laura. You fought for yourself and for Ethan. I'm so proud of you. As I drove home, my mind raced with possibilities. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. No more looking over my shoulder, no more fear of Jack or Helen swooping in to disrupt our lives. I picked up Ethan from my parents' house, hugging him close. How about we go for ice cream, buddy? I suggested. His face lit up. Really? Can I have 2 scoops? I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. You can have as many scoops as you want. We're celebrating. As we sat in the ice cream parlor, Ethan happily devouring his sundae, I looked at my son and felt a surge of love and pride. We'd been through so much, but we'd come out stronger. This was our new beginning, our chance at the family I'd always dreamed of. It wasn't the path I'd expected, but sitting here with my son, I knew without a doubt this was exactly where I was meant to be.